All right, welcome to the video. Today we're going to talk about a digital asset. So we all need digital assets to kind of run our business, right? If you're a serious business owner, you're going to want these assets. And I'm going to start with, I'm going to try to break this down, right? Since I'm talking to real estate professionals, I'm going to try to break this down in a way that makes sense for you as a business owner, right? So for the most part, I'm going to try to use house analogies because we are real estate professionals and we understand houses, right? So in order to build your domain, right, your house, your digital assets, one of the first things that you're going to need up here is a domain, right? In a domain, a lot of times when we think about domain, we think about land and, you know, I'm the king of my domain, or we think about those things. But here, the domain in the digital world, a domain in the sense is, the way I want you to think about domains is I want you to think in terms of records. Right? So a domain is essentially a record for you to kind of exist. And we're talking about breaking things up into analogies of houses, right? So what's the point of a house if a person can't exist, right? So the domain is, in a sense, like you being born at the hospital and the doctors, you know, writing your information down on your birth certificate or whatever. Like, that's the records, right? Social security number, name, blah, blah, blah. That's what a domain is for you. So I'm going to talk about some key points of domains. And one of the first things that I want to start off with is I want to talk about names, right? So domain name, oftentimes you'll hear people say domain name. And what a domain name is just a name. So what website are people going to visit, right? JeromeLewis.com is a domain, as an example, right? So I could purchase a domain name with JeromeLewis.com, and I would purchase that, right? One of the things I want you to do is, if you're in business or not, right? Mostly if you're in business, but even if you're not in business, you should purchase a domain name. And one of the reasons why you should purchase a domain name is because they are fairly cheap, right? For the most part, a domain name generally will cost you about $20 for an entire year, right? And if you're a business owner, you can't afford a domain name for $20 a year, then I don't know what you're doing. You shouldn't be in business, right? So if you're an individual and maybe you don't got a lot going on, maybe I can accept that. But as a business owner, you should definitely purchase a domain name, right? And the domain names that I want you to consider purchasing is, I want you to purchase just your name, right? You want to look and see if your name is available, because that's valuable real estate. My name, JeromeLewis.com, was available. I owned it a few years ago, then I let it go and I had to pay like $200 for it because it's a common name. However, in most cases, you're only going to pay $20 per year for your domain name. So the first domain name, the first purchase that you're going to want to make is your name. Right? Your name as a person, right? And the next domain name that you're going to want to purchase is your business or your brand, right? So as an example, I'm Jerome Lewis. I have a few brands, right, within my business. One of those brands is Digital Real Estate Strategy. So I went out and I purchased that domain, right? Another brand within that business is Remarketing Book. So I went out and I purchased remarketingbook.com as a domain, right? And each of them cost me about what I'm seeing here, $20 per year. I'm gonna give you a tip. When you purchase domains, it can be public record or it can be private record, right? And when you visit domain registrars, or what they're called, they register your domain registrar. When you visit, some of them will sell you privacy, is what we'll call it. They'll sell you privacy for an additional fee. So you can be paying $20, you can be paying $10 or $20 extra for privacy, right? And the reason why you may or may not want privacy is because when you purchase that domain name, it's public record. So people now know you own that domain name. And in my experience, typically when you purchase privacy, people are reaching out to you. Hey, do you want a website? We can build you a website. We can build you a website. And it's, you know, not the most pleasant experience, but there can be some mutual benefit to you letting it be public. I suggest you make it private, but that's one of the things that can come from having a public purchase domain name. Right? So here's a tip. If you want to purchase domains, right? There are several sites out there, but one of the sites that most people are familiar with, and that I'm going to suggest that you use, is Google. So Google has what is called Google Domains, and Google Domains will allow you to purchase a domain for not $20, right? But they'll let you purchase the domain for $12, right? And you get additional privacy. And the privacy is free. It's included. So Google doesn't charge you for privacy. So for one, it's $8 cheaper, right? So now you're only paying $1 per month, right? So you got that. In addition to that, you get the included privacy. So that's where you purchase. I would suggest that you purchase domains from Google Domains. Next, what we're going to talk about is, well, what domain should I purchase, right? So as an example, my name is Jerome Lewis, right? So I want to purchase JeromeLewis.com, right? That's ideally the name I want, right? Ideally, you want a domain name with a .com. With a .com, we're not going to overcomplicate this, right? Your priority is to get a domain name with a .com. So my .com is JeromeLewis.com, right? You got a bunch of other stuff. You got .net, .bitcoin, and all kind of weird stuff. You want to prioritize .com. And if you can't get your name in a .com, maybe go to .net, but I highly suggest you go to a .com. So if you can't get the .com, maybe you use your middle initial, or maybe you use junior or senior or something like that. But you mostly want to go to .com because people often think when they're visiting websites, they're thinking .com. They're not thinking .net, .co, .app.io. They're not thinking those things, right? Most people, 80% of people are thinking about .com. So that is what they're going to type in. And if they type in, let's say Jerome, if they type in .com, nothing will show up, right? Now you can do some filtering and purchasing multiple and let them all go to the .com. But for the most part, you simply want to purchase a .com domain name for yourself. Next, what I want to talk about is you want your domain to be simple. So you want it to be easy to type, right? So ideally as short as possible. If you got a long name, maybe you got a nickname, maybe you can shrink it down or something like that. But ideally you want to eliminate the possibility for error, right? And the less people have to type in, the less likely they are to make a mistake. So you want it to be easy to type, right? JeromeLewis.com. And then you also want it to be easy to pronounce. So when I'm interacting and when I'm talking to people, they're going to know JeromeLewis.com, right? That's easy to say. That's my name, right? Some people mess up my name because, I don't know, retarded, right? Jeremy and all, but JeromeLewis.com is pretty easy to understand and type in. Next, what I want you to think about is, we mentioned this a little bit earlier. So domain names are mostly records, right? So we haven't even gotten into really what a website is. We're going to get into what a website is in the next video, right? The domain name is just existing as a record. It's like, if we go back to that analogy, you are born, right? And then the doctors and the people, they got to make you exist on paper and in the records. So that's the purpose of a domain name. It's mostly records. Now, with domain names, you can do some fancy stuff, right? At the very least, you want to purchase it because maybe I don't want a website. Maybe I just need a form, or I want to send somebody to a common thing that they do with me. As an example, let's just say I'm doing a lot of Zoom calls. So I can have my domain forward over to my personal Zoom room or some kind of Zoom room, and people contact me that way instead of me having to constantly give them a Zoom link or anything like that. My domain could automatically forward and do those things for me, right? So forwarding is a benefit of owning domain records, right? Next, we're going to talk about, I want to talk about why you want to own a domain, right? So we got forwarding, and that's what we're going to talk about is, once you own a domain, you can do just about anything you want with those records. And same thing with a website, but we're not talking about websites. We're going to talk about website and a video to follow, more likely when we get to hosting. But once you own a domain, so let's just go to jeromelewis.com as an example. .com. I own this entire domain name now, right? I own this, so that means I can make up any kind of records I want that includes jeromelewis.com. And there are multiple types of records, but what we're going to focus on is we're going to focus on a subdomain, right? So a subdomain is a domain. A subdomain is an extension of your domain, right? So subdomains are over here. Subdomains are, let's just say, dot. Subdomains come before your domain. So this is a subdomain. These are subdomains. So subdomains can be visit, right? It can be visit.jeromelewis.com. This would be a subdomain, right? So visit.jeromelewis.com. That's a subdomain. And the cool thing about subdomains is that you can have as many as you want. As many as possible, right? So I can have visit 1, I can have visit 2, visit 3, and all of these subdomains are essentially their own website, right? So once you own a domain, you can have nearly unlimited websites. Unlimited websites. Now, hosting and storage is a different story, but once you have a subdomain, you can have as many websites as you want. So jeromelewis.com, how do you visit me? You go to visit.jeromelewis.com, right? That's an example. What else do I do? Let's say you wanted to team up with me, right? So I can have a domain at team.jeromelewis.com, right? Another domain I can have is, let's just say I have some kind of course or university where I teach people something, right? So I can have school.jeromelewis.com, right? So those are subdomains. And a quick something I want to share with you really quickly is when you hear people say www, that is technically a domain name, right? So the primary domain here is jeromelewis.com. When you heard people say this was a subdomain of, and it stands for World Wide Web. So www is a subdomain of whatever domain you have. www.jeromelewis.com, this is actually a subdomain. Now, next, after we talk about subfolders, and key factor here is subdomains exist in front of the main domain. Now, next we're going to talk about subfolders. And subfolders are, we mostly know what subfolders are because we visit them, right? So and they can work very similar to subdomains. There are some slight technical differences, but it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme, right? To you in this video. So subfolders would be, let's make a couple of subfolders, 2, 3, 4. So a subfolder would be, let's say I have a calendar on my website. So a subfolder could be jeromelewis.com/CALEN calendar. And that would take people over to my calendar. So this is a subfolder, right? So it would be jeromelewis.com/. So remember over here we had a dot. Well, over here we have a slash. So jeromelewis.com/calendar. That's a subfolder. And then there can be like multiple subfolders after this. So I can do calendar/January. Then I could do calendar/February, on and on and on and on and on, right? Another example subfolder, let's say I have an about me page. So I can do jeromelewis.com/about me, right? That's another subfolder. So subfolders are folders that exist on your website, right? jeromelewis.com/about me, jeromelewis.com/contact. These are subfolders, right? So What did we talk about today? We talked about a domain and the importance of having a domain. Recap, domains cost you about $20 a year. So you should purchase a domain name. You should purchase as many as you want or as many as you can, to be honest, because they're really inexpensive. And sometimes when you don't own it and you think about something that you want to own, somebody else goes and purchases it. And they can charge you several hundred, several thousand for a specific domain. So if you have an idea and you're thinking about like, oh, I'm going to turn this into something, a brand or a business, purchase that domain. It's better to spend that $20, right? And then say, you know what, I'm not going to do it, than to go and then to slack off, somebody else purchase it and they overcharge you for that particular domain. Like I was lucky enough that mine was only $200 to get it back, but now it's only going to be $20 a year maximum. I was lucky enough that it wasn't as expensive as some that you see. So what you want to do, all right, recap. Domains are important. Domains are where you exist. They're your record on the internet, right? This is what you own. So for $20 a year, you can get a domain name. Ideally, you want to get it your name, and you also want to get your business or your brand of your domain name, right? What you want to do is you want to stick to a .com. If you can do a .com format, domain JeromeLewis.com. If you could pick a .com domain, go with that, because most people type in .com, right? Think about domains as mostly records. They're mostly for you to exist. So we go back to the analogy about the hospital. You were born as a baby. Now they need to document and record that you were born. That's what the domain does. It documents and records that you are born on the internet. It documents and records that your business is born on the internet, right? Forwarding domains. You can do a bunch of fancy stuff with domains. Let's just say you don't have a website. So I have a friend, right, that doesn't really need a website. So what he does is he forwards his domain to a Google Doc that explains everything that he does in his business. So that's like a practical use case for a domain name. Next, subdomains. Subdomains are cool because you can have unlimited subdomains, and a subdomain is its own website. These are multiple websites on your actual website. So these are, I wouldn't even call them mini websites, because they can be full-blown websites on your existing domain, right? And then next we got subfolders, and subfolders are folders that exist on your website. So it's typically when you hear somebody say, go to www.blah, blah, blah, /whatever, /whatever, that is a subfolder, right? So today we learned about domains and the importance of having a domain for your business. What your action item is to go out and purchase a domain name for $20. Even if you don't know what to do with it yet, just go out and purchase it, because in the next videos, we're going to go down that journey and go down that path of making our business exist and functional online and in the digital space, right? So I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the other side. Bye-bye.